Hello and welcome into episode 337 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Bridget Brewer here with Scott McLaughlin. Brian DeFelice is at his other job, plumbing, I think. And so he's not here. And so it's just Scott and I for today. And we are both dead tired because we spent the entirety of the week just doing Jimmy Fun stuff. And we were at Fenway both days, and Scott was there from morning till night writing up whatever had to be written for every show because obviously we have so many guests.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I didn't even really do much writing because I have so little time doing everything else. But but we did have some interviews written up, and we're also recording later than initially planned because Lowell basically got hit by like a hurricane today, pretty much is what it felt like. Yeah. And I was without power for like 5 hours. So just got it back a little while ago here Thursday night as where.
What were you doing? Were you just like having a candlelit dinner by yourself?
No, I took a nap.
You took a nap. That's
like smart. I was like, there's only one thing I possibly want to do right now, and that's take a nap. So I took a nap. Then I drove around just to see, like, is there any damage or whatever. And then actually, like, a bunch of trees down. There was power lines down in one spot. Like, there was a whole street sign that got uprooted and just was across the road. So we actually got like some pretty heavy winds that did some damage. But now I have power back and we're able to record. So
I was imagining you like sitting in your living room with like a flashlight, like you don't even have a cat, like telling yourself ghost stories or something. We're gonna get you a cat though, or Pumbaa. But anyway, we were busy at the Jimmy Fund. We had a few Bruins guests. Also Jeremy Swayman joined Nesson. So we were running around. I was part of the interview with Pavel Zacha. Scott was a little bit jealous about that because Fourier was like, Bridget. Fourier honestly just didn't want to have to ask the questions. I had all
right. I was gonna say
planned. He just didn't want to.
Like either way, like you're either gonna write the questions for Fourier or you're just gonna ask them yourself. So
yes,
you're right there. It makes sense.
He was like, just Bridget, just you're coming.
Yeah.
And then so I was there, and I asked about Elias Lindholm and the fact that he doesn't have any clue yet if he'll be playing center or wing really. Because we've talked about it before, like maybe it's a stacked line with Lindholm and Pasta and Zacha's on the left wing. But we all know how much Jim Montgomery likes to shuffle lines, and I would not be surprised if for some reason a lineup stuck where Zacha is still playing center and they just go really strong down the middle and try to figure out who to plug in on the wings. Like after talking to him about that, I kind of like got my brain going back on like, what's it going to look like in the top six? And I wouldn't be surprised if they're already a top six winger short.
I was going to say that's the only reason I think it won't happen.
I can see it happening because it's Jim Montgomery. Like I can see him being like,
yeah,
okay,
but like
Morgan Geekie.
Like, what are you gonna like? You're gonna have what now? Both Trent Frederick and Morgan Geekie playing in the top six. Like I don't really think they can afford to do that.
Maybe you got like Matt Patra. I don't know. I can. Yeah. It jogged my mind to going down that road. Like I let my mind go down that road, and I was like, he's gonna I can see him doing it, even though I don't think we would agree with it unless we see it and it works, right? Like sometimes we speculate and we're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, but and the other part there is I think they like the Zacha Pastrnak chemistry.
Absolutely.
But you signed Elias Lindholm with the express intent to play him with David Pastrnak. Because if you don't, then you're just doing the same thing the Canucks did, and then you're not like we kind of know that Elias Lindholm's not going to put up 70 points driving a line by himself, but you hope he puts up 70 points playing with a superstar. So, you're like, yeah, I think you're going to give him a pretty long run with Pastrnak to try to get that chemistry going because you envision that as a combination that can play together for you, not just this season, but for many years to come. And having a winger in Zacha with Pastrnak who already has some chemistry. Now, obviously, you could do that with Marchand as well. Like him and Pastrnak have chemistry, but that combination just makes too much sense to me.
Yeah, and like who would Zacha be centering, right? Like we've seen him mostly with Pasternak, so that would be a whole different line situation. But it would move Charlie Coyle probably to the third line center. Like if those are your three centers, those are three good centers. The problem is they don't have the rest of the pieces around to allow for that depth because the winger depth isn't there. So you're stuck putting someone in there, in a different position and not being able to use those three guys as really solid top three centers on your team. Unfortunately, like if they were able to add maybe one more decent forward this offseason, or even if they still just had Jake DeBrusk, like they would have been able to maybe tinker with it a little bit more. I just had my brain going back to some real hockey in the middle of August where we haven't had a chance to talk to these guys in so long, and I wanted to make sure we talked about the free agent signings because we haven't talked to any of the players until the Jimmy Fund about what they thought of the free agent signings. And Zacha also talked about being excited for Nikita Zadorov to come in and add some more physicality.
Yeah, he said, and Charlie Jacobs especially made note of that when he was on with Gretchen Fourier as well. That was on Tuesday. That like it does change the dynamic. Like it just brings more size and physicality to the back end than they had last year. And Charlie Jacobs, when he was on, said like just pretty bluntly that they got pushed around a little bit in the playoffs the last 2 years by Florida. So you can tell, he's kind of, and it's interesting with Charlie Jacobs. It's like I'm sure a lot of his opinions are being formed by like what Cam Neely and Don Sweeney are telling him, but I actually do think Charlie Jacobs is more engaged, certainly than Jeremy was than his father was in recent years, certainly than Jeremy is now, where like we haven't even seen him at the Garden or in front of media in I don't even know how long, since before COVID at least. Like
Yeah.
maybe around the 2019 final or something, but
yeah, and you
like
would have thought that like the big centennial season unveil, maybe but we didn't see him then. It was Charlie. So
yeah, like certainly by all appearances and by everything that I think we hear, like Charlie is the one running things now. Whether his father is technically still in charge or not, like it's Charlie Jacobs running the organization, and I do think he is fairly engaged and around quite a bit. So I'm sure he also had that opinion that like they needed to add more size, grit, physicality, and Zadorov does a lot to address that.
yeah, I kind of get the sense that Don Sweeney makes a point of like keeping Charlie in the loop as much as possible and making that like a two-way street of information just to make sure they're on the same page, which honestly probably helps a lot. Like I know the Red Sox have had issues with that in the past. I mean, the Chaim Bloom firing comes to mind, but this isn't a Red Sox podcast. You can listen to Baseball Isn't Boring for that.
Or play Tessie. We got two of them.
Yeah, there's two. We got two good podcasts about the Red Sox because we're the Red Sox station. But so it was nice. It was nice to see the guys again. My favorite other thing that Fourier did to me that day was he did a lot. A lot, but he also, as soon as Charlie Jacobs sits down, because I bring Charlie Jacobs, I'm like, this is Christian, this is Gresh, like sit him down on the couch, get him his headset, and Fourier says, "Is there anything you want to ask him?" And he's like, come on, like, what's your pressing question? He's like, he wanted me to ask him like this hard-hitting question and just like threw it on me. And I was like, what? Like, what do you think I'm gonna come in here and say? Like, I'm not just gonna like attack the Bruins owner off air like with a crazy question. Well, he was just hoping for some drama. I don't know.
Yeah, and then he does like the half-assed, not completely thought out intro where he's like, "Oh, this is Bridget. She's our Bruins insider," or whatever he said. And like I'm sitting or he said our number one Bruins insider. And meanwhile, I'm sitting right there, like, I'm like, what the hell? Like,
it was a fun day for me. I'll say that because I'm laughing just knowing that Scott was in the background. Like, what the fuck? There was actually the beginning of the Zacha interview, and someone took a picture of me dying laughing when I was on the couch. It was right before we started recording, and it was because I was yelling at Scott off camera, and I was going, "You can't come up here, Scott." I was like, "You stay over there." And there's a picture that someone, like our photographer, took of me just like dying laughing, and it was because of Scott having to sit behind the camera. But anyway, we had fun. And obviously, it is a really difficult day in a lot of ways, with some of really, really sad stories. But at the same time, the atmosphere really was uplifting. It wasn't like a necessarily depressing atmosphere. Everybody that I talked to, because my I was like doing everything that day. I was bringing some of the patients to the set. I was talking to their parents, and everybody just was positive. And it was, so we had, some great interviews. Everybody's in kind of an upbeat mood because we're trying to raise money. Like, we're having stories about hope, survivors, and different things like that. So it's kind of an all over the place emotional roller coaster of a day. But maybe my favorite part was watching Scott have to deal with the shots being fired, and he was just sitting back there.
Yeah, it's a great 2 days. Like I've been part of 11 of these now, and yeah, like you're right. Like some of it is really sad, but so much of it is uplifting and hopeful because you like you hear from the kids who you know have fun while they're there because of all the activities that
And
the Jimmy Fund has for them, and because of the people who come through there.
And the
And then you
dogs, they
hear from
love the service dogs.
oh yeah, Opry was he was a big hit, and he
Yep.
was there for a little bit. He was I don't think he got on camera, at least not on ours. He might have made an appearance on Nesson, but yeah, he was actually around for a little bit on one of the days. But yeah, but you also hear from like the doctors and nurses about all the breakthroughs that have been made in recent years, or in the last 10 years or last 20 years, and like that's what a lot of that money that we raise go to. And we should mention this year's Radio Telethon raised over $3.9 million. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, the final count ends up over 4 million, which is where we got to last year. So
yeah.
it's awesome. I'm sure people who are listening to us, probably some of them donated. So
Yeah.
thank you to everyone.
And you want to know what else I saw that kind of like gave me another, like, because I was tired, right? Like waking up early, driving all over, 4A wearing me down, begging for cookies. One of the things that I'll remember for sure was I walked downstairs because our studio was right above the Nessa studio, the floor above it. So I walked downstairs to go find one of the, like, she's a 7-year-old girl with cancer, and her family, to bring them up. And I had to wait a little bit because Jeremy Swayman came out and was taking pictures with all the kids. And I took this really cute picture of him with her and her younger sister. And he was just, going about making everybody happy. It was just really a good moment to see like them, like him interacting with everyone and making, them happy and taking the pictures. And so I get a chance to talk to him for a few minutes, but I didn't ask him any hard hitting questions. I just let him do his thing. It was like, I tried to get him to come on our show. I said, "Come on, Jeremy, come upstairs with me. We're going to get you on." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "No, I'm just kidding. We're both going to get in trouble if I do that." So unfortunately didn't get to ask him about the contract situation, but that's another topic we want to talk about right now, which is a little bit of reporting that is of concern.
Yeah, a little bit of reporting, but also Swayman's own comments, because he was on Nesson while he was there, and Adam Pellerin asked him about it, if there's any update, and Swayman said he has a lot of confidence, was his quote, that something will get done. He said he's treating this summer just like normal. He's in Boston. He's been skating and working out at Warrior with teammates, with team staff. We've said it before, but like, he certainly is not acting like anyone who has any doubt in his mind that he's going to remain a Bruin. Like, we talked about how he was at development camp. He was in the team promos for the schedule release. Like,
didn't go to arbitration.
Right. Neither side went to arbitration. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna get done. Charlie Jacobs said he has full confidence that it's gonna get done. But there was you also had this week Elliotte Friedman on his 32 Thoughts podcast, which, by the way, I will just say, real bummer that Jeff Marek is no longer on that. People can read up on that if they want in the sports media world business, but
Yeah.
basically had an issue with like potentially tipping draft picks to someone, and
I mean, it's called reporting, but
yeah, like the whole kind of gambling world, it kind of became a situation where
the gambling world does mess up like reporting, and it's messed up.
It's like a really fine line between, okay, you're reporting something as an insider breaking news versus like people then using that for gambling tips, basically.
Yeah.
And
that's on them. Like it's an unpredictable thing. And like, I don't know.
And I will, like, his was a little different. It wasn't as straightforward as like he reported.
I don't know.
It's like he was telling it to someone privately. So it's a little different, but
yeah.
Regardless, we're not getting too much into that. That's kind of
no. I will say that he was next to us for the Winter Classic when we went upstairs and looked for the WEI seat, which Scott got. I moved, but it was right next to
Bridge it out.
Yeah, it was right.
I was our number one Bruins insider at that point, but apparently you've passed me since.
At some point in time behind your back, I really hopped right over you, but no, but they were so nice. They were, I mean, they're Canadian, but like, so maybe I should have expected it, but I kind of like moved my stuff because we were encroaching on their space a little bit. They were super nice. They said, "Do you want a coffee?" I said, "No, thank you. I don't drink coffee," but I was not expecting them to ask me if I wanted a coffee after meeting me for 2 minutes. But anyway, we were talking about the podcast that Swayman was mentioned in. Let's go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so Elliotte Friedman so he was mostly talking about the whole Blues offer sheeting 2 Oilers players, which we'll get into because I do also think that ties into Swayman a little bit. But towards the end, he kind of just did like round robin, just sort of like random news and nuggets. And on Swayman, he said that the last that he heard, they weren't close, that it had been a challenging negotiation, but there was still time. But he also acknowledged that he hasn't really been bugging people about it recently. So I guess, in my mind, like last he heard, it's like, well, was that a few weeks ago, a month ago? Was that around free agency? Like it didn't sound like that was necessarily
this
super
week.
Recent reporting.
Yeah.
So, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But, and then there's also the, well, what does they're not that close mean? Are they $1 million per year apart? 2 million apart? 3 million apart? Like, like in my mind, $1 million apart wouldn't, like, that would be fairly close. Like that, to me, that's a relatively easy gap to bridge. You figure both sides are going to end up giving about 500,000. But if they're like 2 million apart, it's like, okay, yeah, that's a little bit of a bigger gap and would mean there's probably more work to do. And, I still all along have said I expect it to get done and I'm not all that worried about it. And I still am, but like, I also get fans, if you hear that, you're obviously not going to be encouraged to hear that.
Yeah, no, and of course, the situation being that they already traded Olmark, it makes the anxiety higher. It's like, all right, well, they got Korpisalo, and everybody, all the Bussy fans, like, you might have to see Bussy, but obviously, it's just a little bit of nerves surrounding a situation that most likely will be resolved once they come back together. And obviously, a lot of the guys are starting to come back. Right? Like we saw Swayman around, we saw Zacha. They've gone to the weddings. They've had their vacations and they're starting to come back to the rink. In fact, Elias Lindholm was at Warrior for the first time today. So he was checking it out. I think he went on the ice for a little bit, just getting acclimated with the facility. And so he's here, and it's just kind of, we're at that point where people are trickling back in. And so maybe now the conversations can be had.
Yeah, Elias Lindholm also went on a swan boat ride at Boston Common. They that was so Elaine got to do the like I don't know if they're calling it Warrior one-on-one because it wasn't at Warrior, but like the one-on-one video for their social and site, and they did it on a swan boat. So
I haven't seen that yet, and I'm going to have to find it. But Elaine does a really good job.
My hard-hitting takeaway from it was that Elias Lindholm looks like a combination of Matt Grzelcyk and AJ Greer, and a lot of people on Twitter now. A lot of people on Twitter now agree with me, and I think that's all that they're going to be able to see.
Now I'm probably going to have to see that every time. But this is your BU bias. Like they are.
I was going to say, that almost makes him like an honorary Terrier now.
I guess, yeah. Did he even go? I don't think he played college hockey.
He's from Sweden.
Yeah, I don't think but Swedish guys play college hockey.
Yeah. But it's no, I think he played juniors and probably like SHL over
there. Well, we'll go back to Swayman for a second here because the point is, to wrap up the conversation about him, we think that the term is not the holdup. It feels like it has to be the money, but it's it could get done not until September, but obviously has to get done before the season because he doesn't have a contract. So there is a definite amount of time. Like the most recent contract that we were all kind of talking about was the Pastrnak contract, but they had a much longer time frame to get that done because they got it done before he became a free agent at all. So, which they had to. But Scott, any other thoughts on the Swayman new details, I guess, from this week?
Well, to tie it into the offer sheets from St. Louis, like that was kind of a bit of a jolt to the system and probably to an extent a wake-up call to teams that still have unfinished business with restricted free agents. So for anyone who maybe wasn't following, technically you can submit an offer sheet to a free agent, to a restricted free agent. That player, if they agree to sign it, it then gives the team that holds their rights 7 days to either match it or accept draft pick compensation for them to go to their new team. So the Edmonton Oilers had 2 restricted free agents, 2 younger players, Philip Broberg, defenseman, and Dylan Holloway, forward. And the St. Louis Blues submitted offer sheets to both of them. Both of them signed. And the Oilers, as we record here, I think have like 3 or 4 days left to decide if they're going to match or take draft picks from St. Louis. I think Broberg would cost a 2nd-round pick. Holloway would cost a 3rd-round pick. Offer sheets are rarely used. I think this is the first one since the Hurricanes pried Jesperi Kotkaniemi away from the Canadiens a few years ago. So you could look at that and be like, well, hey, Bruins, like, look, someone actually is using an offer sheet. The big difference here is that it's going to cost a lot more to sign Jeremy Swayman to an offer sheet and pry him away from the Bruins, because you would likely have to go to the tier above $9 million a year. Otherwise, the Bruins, if you went to 8.5, the Bruins are just going to match.
Yeah.
And to get into that tier, you would have to give the Bruins, if they declined to match, 2 first-round picks, a 2nd-round pick, and a 3rd-round pick. And they have to be all your own picks so it'd be your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in 2025, and then your own 1st in 2026. So if you don't own all those picks, you can't even submit the offer sheet. So there are actually only 7 teams that even could make that offer to Swayman. So
also it doesn't sound like a fair trade, to be honest with you. Like if you were to actually try to acquire him with a trade, you probably only need 2 of those picks. Not like 2 first rounders.
Like it would cost an awful lot.
True. It would also cost like players, and it would cost a lot. But to see all of it in draft picks is kind of absurd. You know what I mean? Like you're used to seeing it split. Like, okay, 1st-round pick and this, because nobody wants to give up that much draft capital in the near future. Not saying he's not worth it, but like that's a lot. It's a lot of draft picks. You'd rather throw in like a defense, or you know what I mean. So yeah, luckily, Scott, it was like you were gonna give people a new thing to worry about, but then you're like, nah, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I would still say it's extremely unlikely that anyone's going to offer sheet Swayman. But it's just a reminder that like it can happen. It's very rare. And for one, as for as big of an offer as you would have to give up for Swayman, it's even rarer. So I it doesn't really change my opinion that happened this week with Broberg and Holiday, because I just don't really think they're comparable. Like a second round pick for one player and a third for another is just very different than
Yeah.
two firsts, a second, and a third.
Yeah. And then even like, how do they even figure out the compensation for that?
It's just I don't know like how they decide on, but it's just an agreed to system. Like it's just there's different financial tiers, and if you offer this amount of money, like that's the draft pick compensation. So, like I said, like to get to Swayman, I think this is the highest tier is $9.1 million or over. And obviously, like if you're submitting an offer sheet for the player, the goal is like you're very serious about signing, so you have to get to a salary that you don't think the other team's going to match, and you have to be willing to give up all those picks, because if you do it and it's like, oh, okay, well they just made it fair. Like if someone came in and was like, we're going to offer sheet Swayman for $8 million, because if the Bruins don't want to sign for $8 million, we'll take him. It's like, well, the Bruins will sign him for $8 million. They'll match that, and then you've just pissed off Don Sweeney and like soured a relationship with another GM for no reason. Like I can tell you right now, the Oilers are not happy with the Blues, and that's going to be a frosty relationship in any future trades. But the Blues obviously believe that the Oilers won't match one or both, because otherwise they wouldn't have done it. Like they see two players they want, so they figure it's worth it. And if we piss off the Oilers, then so be it. Right now, the Oilers are over the cap, so like they are in a bit of a bind. Like they don't, they do not want to be, in their mind, overpaying for those two guys to keep them. So
yeah,
I would bet that they do let at least one of them go.
That's such a baller move.
Yeah,
it really is. It's like, okay, figure it out. Like you guys figure it out. Like you guys have to figure out which one of them you have to let go, because you might have not even have the cap space for both. It's like that is the biggest hardball move just in the middle of August. It's awesome. I like it. It's chess, where you don't see it that often, and it's it could end up making the Oilers look stupid, like if they mishandle the situation. And obviously it's a high pressure, you're caught off guard in the first place, is always frustrating. But yeah, I don't know how Oilers fans feel about it in terms of like what management should do, or if they messed up along the way.
Yeah, I think what I've seen is like they're kind of upset that it happened, but if the Oilers let them both go and take the picks, they're ultimately probably going to be okay with it, because like Broberg does have the higher upside, but he's been a little up and down in his NHL career so far. A second round pick for him is pretty good, and Dylan Holloway is a good player, but ultimately probably a third liner ideally. So it's like a third round pick for him is, that's not bad business either. So it's I don't think they're going to look dumb, because it's like even if they let them go, they're
getting something.
Yeah, you got a pretty good return for it. So it would hurt them for this year, because I think both of those players are definitely part of their plans. But it does kind of. I really applauded the Oilers off season, like bringing in Skinner and Arvidsson, like taking chances on those guys. But now, like if you especially if you lose Holloway up front, it's like, well, one or both of those guys better pan out. Now it's not just like, yeah, we'll just take a flyer and see what happens. Now it's like, okay, yeah, they're probably actually going to need something from those guys.
Yeah. In St. Louis, it's like they're both busts, and then
I'm sure Carolina gave up 2 first-round picks for Kotkaniemi. That has not worked out.
Yeah, we had this conversation pre-free agency and trying to add another forward about Kotkaniemi and how his value has decreased since going to Carolina. But is there anything else hockey-wise you want to talk about? Because there's one other thing that has happened since our last podcast, besides all that we just mentioned, which is that Judd Sirott got hired for Jack's job. If you want to talk about that, or if any final hockey stuff.
Yeah, we can do that. I think it's a good hire. Like I've always liked Judd. I've liked his calls. Obviously, very knowledgeable. He's around all the time. He's in the locker room all the time. Like definitely knows the team, knows the players. So I have like absolutely no reason to complain at all. I think NESN had quite a few good candidates. And of the ones that, not to like mention any other names, but I'd say like of the ones that I heard as finalists, like Judd definitely would have been very close to the top of my list. So I think it's a good hire. I know there's online, there seems to have been a bit of a split opinion. Like there's people who love him and seen more.
That's Twitter though. That's
more criticism of the choice than I would have expected.
It is a very good choice. Like who could you possibly that they were interviewing, right? There were some guys that they wanted that didn't actually, want the job, but of the people who did and that were in like the final process of getting the job, like he knows the Bruins. Like the difference is you probably, there were plenty of good broadcasters, but Judd has been covering the Bruins and has relationships with the Bruins and has relationships with the people from NESN. And like, he has relationships with all the reporters. Like I know Judd. I became friends with him after one of the trips to Montreal. He's actually, kind of helped me a little bit with some advice for my own play-by-play career. So I appreciate that from him. And I think he does a good job. And there's really I don't see any reason for criticism in this hire at all.
Yeah. I guess like any public job, you're going to have detractors.
I know.
Jack Edwards himself was not
universally
very far from it.
I have been there, my friend, because we do the same job, Judd and I, and there is always, oh, you're too boring, or, something about your appearance or your voice, or it's half the people you look at the comments, it's like, she's got a great voice. And then the other half is like, she's annoying. Like, it's like, okay, all right, guys. So yeah, I understand it's going to come with criticism. That doesn't mean it should. Like, that doesn't mean it's warranted. Or like, I just wish people kept some of that shit to themselves, because it is unnecessary. Ultimately, it's not going to change anyone's mind. It's not going to change the decision. Like, it, just leave people alone. He's a good dude. He's good at his job. Everyone's going to like him. People are afraid of change. I understand that, but
there's no such thing as leaving people alone in the internet age. So
no, this is why I don't like Twitter. This is why I don't even want to go on Twitter. As a lot of bad things have happened recently to some of my friends on Twitter that I'm like, I just have no interest in this. It's bad. Like, I'll occasionally tweet, like I tweeted yesterday, just the picture of Swayman, but yeah, it's not good. It's not a fun place to be. And of course, the last few days I've been on Gresham Fourier, and the Twitch chat just comes at you. Just keeps coming. And I'm like, oh, geez. They comment on my clothes. I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah. See, that's why I didn't go on camera. Just because of that.
The Twitchers. Oh, no. They commented today that my shorts were too short. I was like, okay, good job, guys. And then the other day they said I looked like I was getting naked because I was wearing my sweater, like my cardigan, like slightly off shoulder. So that's problematic. Occasionally I'll see like comment was deleted. Like, I'm like, I wonder what that said, because it can't be good. Anyway, yeah. So I can relate to hearing that, seeing that.
Yeah. I mean, to bring it all back though, like, yeah, I think Judd's going to be really good, and it's gonna have Brick to work with. Brick is sticking around, which we already knew, but it was also confirmed as part of this press release. So Yeah, I think that's going to be a really good team. And obviously now there's an opening on the radio, and
and some of the
there's
same people are
yeah.
in the process of going through that. I'd heard it's actually a pretty extensive search. From what I understand, it's not just like there's no, at the start of it, there was no like clear favorite from what I heard. It's just like, we're going to hear from a bunch of people. Some people told me I should apply. I was like, I'm not applying for that. I applied for the TV one because, I mean, that's what I've been doing the last, I don't know, 6-7 years. I haven't done radio in forever. And that was actually something that Judd and I had a conversation about, like going from one to the other, which is funny that now he's going from one to the other.
Yeah. So obviously not our station though. So, we'll let them handle their business.
Yeah. But another reason why it's a good hire, like these guys and girls who broadcast play-by-play on the radio have an incredible vocabulary, are very descriptive, have to really, like, their brain is trained to really tell the story the right way that people can understand it. And now he's on TV, so you can see it, but he's also going to be good at describing. And I think it helps if you have to have a background in radio, in my opinion, to do a good job with the describing it, as if people maybe are not seeing it, like maybe they're not paying attention, or you know what I mean, like you are the eyes, like you are the narrator. So he'll do good. I know he's going to do well.
Yeah, and I will say, like, there's also obviously an adjustment going from one to the other, where Judd's been on radio for a long time now, even going back to when he was in Chicago. I think pretty much all his work there was on the radio side.
Yeah,
and it's like what you were saying about radio, you have to describe everything because you are the listener's eyes. TV, you don't. Like TV, you can let things
easier,
breathe.
guys. TV's way easier. I did one radio broadcast this year, and it was not like riding a bike. Let me just say that. It's like, because it took me a second to get back into, like, okay, you have to say near side, far side. You have to describe the locations on the ice, and then like on TV, you don't have to worry about it. The hardest part for me was the dynamic with the color commentator is completely different, because you don't have to talk that much about, like, you don't have to be talking all the time to describe play. You can have a conversation during play at different points where it's like, it's not near the net, or it's like transitioning slowly, or somebody's waiting for a line change. Like, there's more opportunities to have a conversation. And that's an adjustment that I had to be told, Bridget, you're talking too much. You should allow the color like, you don't have to say everything. So that's one.
Yeah, and so like that'll be an adjustment for Judd. Like, but like he has done TV before. It's just been a while. So
yeah.
But we'll see. Like, is he talking too much? Is he doing more radio play-by-play than TV? Like that. Like, I think I was one of the few people who, not that I didn't like Doc Emmerich. Like, I liked him. Obviously, it's really hard to hate him, but I did always feel like Doc Emmerich talked too much. Like, it was nonstop. He described every single thing that was happening, and my feeling was always like, it's TV. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you don't. And it took me a while. It was a transition for sure. And it's never fun when someone comes down to you and they say, Bridget, we're going to need you to talk less. It's like, I'm offended, like, immediately, like, what?
I say that all the time after podcasts, and she just never listens
Bridget,
to me.
You need to talk less. Like, it is a really tough criticism to take. You're like, damn it. All right, I can't tell if they're being rude or they're right about this, or both. So, yeah. But even if it takes a little bit, like, it's an adjustment. It's give them a break. Like, if you notice it, it's not going to be like that forever. There's, everybody adapts to the new circumstances. And not for nothing, getting a new color commentator, sometimes it takes a sec. Like, sometimes it's not instant chemistry, because Rick's been used to the same guy forever. So he's, there's a chance they talk over each other. There's been times where I get a new color commentator and I just don't know. I don't want to throw it to them with a question or like lead them into a conversation that they're not ready for. And then I'll have more experienced color commentators where I'm like, okay, like they want me to do that a lot rather than, so it can take time.
Right. Yeah. Because it's also like, knowing those moments, like when, okay, he's done with his point, I'm going to jump in now. And it doesn't have to be as obvious as like, okay, I'll lead him in with like a question that sets him up. Like it can be more conversational. It's like, I think we've gone through that even just on a podcast. Or like
I was just going to say, so I was just thinking back to our chemistry early on. And I remember Brian and we knew each other, but we didn't know you. And we were feeling you out. we were like, I don't know how Scott's going to be. We don't know anything about him. He's like, you were a little bit shy in the beginning. We were like, I don't know how much we can, jab him with jokes and stuff, if he's going to take it or if he's going to hate us. But it all worked out fine.
and now it's great. And
now we're on episode 337. So
yeah, and we've done probably almost 300 of those.
Yeah, we've done a majority of them at this point.
Like we were definitely like way under 100 when we started. So
yeah, we were, because I remember we were saying, "Oh, this is the podcast episode Pasternak." You know what I mean? Like, which player has the name of the? Yeah. So it was under 100. And now obviously 337. Do you know any players with 337? Bergeron plus 300.
33 Chara and 37 Bergeron. So they just kind of combine in the middle.
Yeah, sure, Scott. Yep. Mm-hmm. What's it called? Like an anagram, or I don't know when you put them together. All right. I'm tired.
I have nothing else. I'm ready.
I'm tired as heck. So, I want to preface that next podcast we will have Pierre McGuire on with us. So that we'll be recording that Monday morning. I'm going to try to get that up as soon as possible. So look for it maybe around noon. It all depends on my laptop and how quickly it wants to do its thing and upload the podcast. But we're excited to have Pierre. Probably going to talk about, and by the way, before we do that, like if you have anything you want us to ask Pierre, tweet at us, email us, however you want to get in contact with us. But we'll probably end up talking about, some wider NHL stuff, because, he is, I believe, living up in Canada right now. And yeah, he's got thoughts. He's got thoughts on wider NHL subjects. And who knows what we're going to talk about, to be honest with you. I feel like that this could be a conversation where you just go down like some random wormhole because it's Pierre. Just like he's gonna say something. We're gonna just have like questions about. We're gonna have to go down that road. But I met Pierre in Montreal. I feel like I've said that about everyone. I met this person in Montreal. Those Montreal trips, they're good. I make a lot of friends on those.
I was gonna say, like, are you just like secretly living in Montreal? Like, you haven't told us.
I literally went twice to Montreal covering the Bruins, like once last year, once the year before. And I swear I made great friends every time. It's because you're on the road and like everybody just kind of congregates, and like all the reporters, and we all just kind of, when you're in the downtime where you're waiting, you just all talk to each other, or you go to the bar together. I went for a hike with Matt Porter one time, from the Boston Globe. I don't know, and that was also in Montreal. So just do whatever. So I'll be going back, right, Scott? We're going back.
Yeah, not until April, because for some reason
we're going to go in February. We're going in February.
Unless we go for Four Nations.
Yeah, well, I'm going.
I'm not 100% on that yet.
Oh, you're coming. I'm going to kidnap you.
I don't think that's legal.
You can't use this in court.
Especially kidnapping and then transporting across a border. Like that's gotta land you like lifetime prison or something.
They never check the trunk. I've gone up a few times. They don't check the trunk. You know how innocent I look? They don't know. One time I drove into Canada with like we drove into Canada with a trunk full of beer from Treehouse.
Bridget, you don't tell that to people. Now the authorities are gonna know.
It's not the first time I've done it, and it's not gonna be the last. But anyway, can't use that against me either. We officially bought that after we came back to the US.
We gotta log off before Bridget confesses to more crimes.
You want to hear the other crimes we've done? All right. This is what happens when I'm tired. You never know. You just never know. It's more fun that way. All right, Scott. You good?
I'm good.
All right. Yep. All right. So tune in Monday. We're going to have Pierre. But for now, enjoy your weekend. And thank you all for listening.
Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.